Well, you guessed it. It's still raining. Although it looks like after today we got a reprieve. The next chance of rain isn't until next Thursday. So, God, I hope I get a chance to cut some beans this week. At least the one field I got to get done to get wheat planted. If we don't get the wheat in by the end of October, might as well just write it off. But it's still late. It's probably too late, but I'm still going to try it. I ain't going to fertilize it till spring, so if it doesn't come up, all I got to do is plow it back down, and it'll just be a cover crop, basically. But it's worth a shot, so anyway, I'm sure guys have planted wheat later and still got a decent crop off of it. And I wasn't going to video this until A, it was raining, so I wasn't going to have a video to put up today, and B, I realized yesterday that this old Sears this year has been in my family for 50 years. Granddad bought it new in 1971. 2021. Actually, it's just a tick over 50 years because Granddad bought it in the spring of 70. I'm pretty sure the spring of 71. Is the spring or the summer of 71, I'm pretty sure. Because they mowed with it before they blew snow with it. I'm pretty sure. But either way, yeah, I'd like to see you get 50 years out of a lawn tractor built today. Well, now you don't even get lawn. This is a garden tractor. This isn't even a lawn tractor. This is a garden tractor. This is meant to like be a miniature tractor. Now you just buy riding lawnmowers. But anyway, I got some pictures that I'm going to show you here later of this thing. But first thing first, I want to get it back together so I can start it. This whole saga started earlier this summer when the starter generator quit starting and generating. And it turns out it broke one of the wires going to one of the field windings. And so got it off. Dad and I rebuilt it, or well, we didn't really, it had been rebuilt. All we had to do was fix that field winding, and I put new bearings in it because the bearings that were in it were shot, because you can't buy good bearings for these things anymore. They're all junk China bearings. You can't even cross them to a Timken number to be, well, you can, but you get the Timken bearing you get is just a shit China bearing, because apparently they don't feel the need to make a decent United States bearing anymore. So needless to say, you can't get decent bearings for them generators. They're junk. You get about 2 years out of them, if you're lucky. So, anyway, got the starter generator rebuilt. It was starting again. Well, I put it back on, and apparently something went haywire in the old Niehoff regulator that had been on there. Dad thinks this is the second or third regulator for it. But I took the cover off. I took this all apart yesterday because I was not planning on filming it, and I took the cover off the regulator, and it would appear that it has burnt the contacts out of the cutout relay, because there's a big deposition, or there's a big deposit of metal on one side of the contact and a big hole on the other side of the contact. So my guess is that's why it wouldn't stay closed and stay charging, because it would charge, not charge, charge, not charge, charge, not charge. So my guess is that's the problem. But got a new regulator for it. And all the wires going to the regulator and all the battery cables, the ends were getting pretty rough. There were some broken wires where the ends were crimped on and stuff. So I went through, and we had all the right colors to make all new wires for everything. So everything that goes to the starter or the generator, or the starter or the regulator, is going to be new. There's a couple up in the dash that are a pain to get to that I didn't make, but they're fine. So I got all new wires going to it. I got the stuff to remake the battery cables. This one I think has been remade before, because the crimps on it don't match the other two. Plus it's red and everything else was black. So, but that end is just about ready to come off because the wires are broke. The ground cable only has half the wires, so it was time to put new cables on it. And after, with the regulator acting up, it cooked the old battery, which the old battery was 2 years old, which is impressive for a lawnmower battery to begin with. So I got a new battery for it. So with all that, first things first, I'm going to make the new battery cables because those are easier to put in with the regulator out of the way. And then I'm going to put the regulator back in and hopefully it charges. Fingers crossed. Okay. Luckily, Napa had everything I needed, which was a first. I shouldn't say that. It's not necessarily a first. They're usually pretty good. I just wasn't expecting them to have the small battery cable ends because they're kind of an oddball. At least I figured they would be kind of an oddball, but they had some. They had enough of them in stock to do what I needed to do. Because I found it's odd they have these great big battery. Well, they're not great big. They're 4-aught battery cables, but they go to these little 1/4-inch terminals. And I'm gonna get some fancy red heat shrink. And I'm sure guys are going to bitch because I'm crimping the ends on instead of soldering them, because there's a bunch of guys out here that have a hard-on for soldering wires. I have never, ever, one time had a crimp fail. Not one single time. The key is to have a crimp tool that's not a complete piece of shit, which there are a lot of those. I might end up double crimping these. I'm gonna have to double crimp these. No, that's because that barely did anything. Okay, next setting. We want... Where did it go? That guy right there. Right? Yep, that guy. Okay, now we're gonna get somewhere. Right? Still not small enough. You bastard. I think that's even the smallest one in here. Yep, that is the smallest one in this kit, or in this crimper. Okay, so see what else we got. Okay, so I figured out the trick. You take the smallest die and you double hit it, and that gets it down about to the right size of the cable. And then you go on the little nubbin in between the dies and you make a dimple crimp. It's kind of tricky, because the handles on this thing are kind of stiff. And just like that, that thing ain't going nowhere. Like I say, there's going to be guys on here that are going to be all throwing a bitch fit because I'm not soldering them. But I have never had a crimp fail if you do it right. And soldering has its place, high-end or high-performance electrical systems where you don't want the resistance and all that stuff. Yes, this is just a damn lawnmower. The original ones were crimped. They lasted 50 years. This one can be crimped. It's going to last another 50. And get the heat shrink gun out. I just realized you guys can't see shit because I didn't set that camera up right. That is my bad. And there we go, there's one done. Okay, so I got all three of them done. This red guy goes from the generator to the ignition switch. That's why it's got the two small ends on it. And then this guy is the positive cable from the ignition switch to the battery, which is why I put the red heat shrink on it. The original one was black, so I kept it black to keep it. I'm sure this one was probably supposed to be black too, but you can't see it, and it's nice to have it red so that you know what the hell's going on down there. And then this is just the ground cable that goes from the battery to the frame. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these put in. Unfortunately, there's not obviously shit for room in there because it is a lawnmower, so I'm not gonna be able to video it. But trust me, it's not fun. Okay, I got all the battery cables in, so now it's time to get all of my wires hooked back up. Should have 4 of them. And then 2 ground wires, which are that guy there and that guy there. Alright, and I marked all these when I took it all apart, so first off, I'm looking for armature, which is going to be, this is going to go in like that. So I want him to slide in like this. I was impressed we had all the right wire colors to do this. Okay, and then I want, what's this guy? This is load, so that's that one right there. Now the one thing I did not see in the box is whether or not they want you to polarize this. Normally, if they want you to polarize it, they're pretty adamant about putting instructions in the box on how to polarize it. So I'm guessing that they don't want you to polarize it, so I'm not going to polarize it. And if it doesn't charge, I guess we'll have to polarize it. It seems like you do that more on 6-volt regulators. Okay, this is field, which is that guy right there. And also, a fun fact about voltage regulators that we found out over the years. There are really only two manufacturers of voltage regulators anymore. One is in the United States, one is in India. You gotta look at the lettering. If it's blue lettering, it's made in the United States. If it's green lettering, it's made overseas. Fun fact for the day. I think the company that makes the US ones is in like Kansas or Nebraska or something. Okay, and then our last one is battery. You just don't know what you want to do today, pup. She's just about sick of the rain. She wants to go out, but then she looks out the door and realizes it's raining, and she's like, well, I don't want to go out. But if you go out, she'll go out. But then if you're not doing something to keep her occupied, she wants to go back in, but then she realizes that you're not going back in, and it's... Yeah. I want it to be nice out again. I think everybody does. Okay, now the fun part is stuffing this thing back into this nice micro size hole. Without tangling it up on everything. And I'm going to try to do a decent job of tying these wires up, because before they were all in there just kind of willy-nilly. Alright, so that just kind of sits back in there on the frame like that, but I got to go get me some new bolts. So, well, at least new lock washers. And then that ground wire right there, and this ground wire right here, come on, those both hook on this mounting bolt on this side. So I'll finish getting this put in. Well, I got everything back in there and tried to start it, or at least tried to roll it over. And all it started to do was growl. It wouldn't do anything, which I found kind of odd, because last time I ran it, I just jumped it with a battery charger because the battery was dead, and it started just fine. And it sat for about 3 weeks in between mowing the yard, and all this happened. I figured the battery was just shot beyond recognition. So anyway, tore it apart. One of the brushes had jumped out of the holder and schmelted. So we had another starter. This one I put in the tractor when this one quit trying to start earlier this summer initially, and then that one charged for one mowing and then quit for some reason. The armature on this one's pretty rough. But so I took the brushes out of this one were damn near new. So I put those in here, cleaned up the armature a little bit. And I'll slap it back together and put it back in. And I guess I'll have to get some parts. The bearings in this one feel good. I just don't know. That looks like a new armature, and it still looks rough. It's hard finding good shit these days. But this one was just kind of, it wouldn't charge, and it was loud. It was rubbing right there. Huh, interesting. So I'll have to get parts to rebuild that one. Which I guess I know I have at least a couple guys that dabble in rebuilding starters and generators. Where do you go to find your parts, and how do you search for them? I know it's a Delco generator. I'm guessing that V670, oh no, there's the model number. So do you just go in, how do you search for parts and where do you go to look for them? I guess that would help me out. Because I've tried looking before and I've found some stuff, but I guess I wanted to be able to go to a trusted source. So if anybody knows of a good place to find generator parts, specifically brushes, magnets, field windings, you know, stuff like that. Bearings are easy enough. You can cross those over to bearing warehouse, but like internal important electrical parts, where's a good place to look for them? So anyway, I'm going to slap this bad boy back together, put it back in, and hopefully this time it'll start and charge. Fingers crossed. Okay, obviously I still got parts off it I got to put back on, but before I go through the trouble putting that all back on so that if something's wrong I got to take it all back off, I'm going to start it, see if it'll charge. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. Come on, baby. It's charging. And there's no funny sounds coming from the starter. Well, that's enough to satisfy me, so I guess I'll finish putting it back together. Well, she's all back together. I hate working on lawnmowers, garden tractors, small engines. I just can't stand it. Not that there's anything mechanically overly complex about it, but they're trying to stuff 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound box, and there's just nothing fun about working on them. But she's worth it. But like I said, I got pictures for you. And these are just ones that I found real quick because I knew which photo album they were in, so I dug them out. There's more. I need to go. My grandma has a bunch of pictures of this thing back when it was new, and they were garden tractor pulling with it, and they got pictures of this thing. Somewhere they have pictures of all the trophies. Unfortunately, for some reason, Granddad decided it was a good idea to throw all the trophies away. Dad thought at one point they had like 93 or 94 pulling trophies with this thing. But, anyway, these are all from 1996, so I would have been, that's looking like the fall of 96, so I wouldn't have been 3 years old yet. Because I was born in December of 93, so if this is the fall of 96, I'd have been just shy of 3 years old. So, this is right out here in front of the garage. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that with that little green Chevy in the background. That was my mom's old 94 half-ton. That was the truck that, that was the first truck that was my truck. I drove that truck through high school before I had my red truck that was my dad's 96, but I had to get that thing roadworthy again, so I drove mom's old green truck through high school, then got my red truck on the road in college, and then obviously you saw the video, I just finally bought that silver truck this last spring. But Still got that wagon too. Dad built that wagon. I remember welding the frame together out here. Dad had an old Lincoln. Actually, I think Granddad still got it. It's an old Lincoln Tombstone buzz box. What were they? A little Lincoln 250, I think. Whatever the little tombstones were. That's what Dad welded that together with. And I remember when that was the first time at least that's the first time I can recall seeing Dad weld, and I remember being scared of the welder because the sound scared me. It actually took me a few years to get used to being around a welder, but we also obviously used to run John Deere weights on it. That was the weights that they always had on it when they pulled, because they were a dime a dozen. So there's that. And then there's me and Dad cleaning the mower deck. That's obviously right here. You see the bench, and probably would have been standing right about here when we took that picture. And then, pretty sure this one's 96, yep. 6 and 96. So, I'm driving it. And that's Dad. That's back before we had the little shed. That's where that pad is. No, that shed's built on that pad. That was back. Obviously, that's the field I farm now. That was back when that was still a horse pasture. And I remember this picture was the day, I think I told this story when I did the first video of this thing. This was the day, and it probably wasn't too long after Mom took this picture. I was driving around, and I ran the front wheels into the side of that pad where Dad's standing, and I obviously couldn't climb up over the concrete, so I was sitting there in second gear bouncing off of that pad because I couldn't reach the clutch. And then here's Dad and I cleaning the deck again. This is 6 and 96. This is way back before the shop was even finished. Believe it or not, when I was a little kid, Dad had, because this picture is that wall right there. Before this was finished, and that was before Dad had the pole barn out back put up, our 4-speed 60, the 77, the Sears were all stacked in here along that wall. I remember there's a picture of the 77 and the 60 against that wall. I'd have to see if I could find that. So, yeah, I just figured I'd get them pictures out and show you. 50 years in the same family is quite an achievement for a lawnmower. And 50 years of basically consistently, I don't think it's had a single year where it hasn't cut grass. It's wore out. I think I'm on mower deck number 5. That black mower deck, I'm pretty sure was number 3. It's on its 3rd engine. It never blew an engine up, but the first 2 just got to the point where they had no compression left because they were so wore out. Actually, I take that back. It seems like one of the first ones, Briggs has that little tin oil slinger that bolts on one of the rod bolts that throw oil up in the top of the motor. It seems like one of the first 2, that oil slinger broke off and got wedged in the governor and held the motor wide open, and it blew up. And I don't remember if that was the first one. I'm pretty sure it was the first one. I'm pretty sure the first one it did blow up because that oil slinger broke off and held it wide open. And the second one got to the point where it just had no compression left, and Dad was looking at rebuilding it. And at the time, the small engine shop he was working with, he had a brand new 15-horse long block crate motor sitting on the shelf. So Dad just ended up buying a long block for it. So now it's got the 15 horse in it instead of the 14 horse. So it's on its third engine. I think Dad said it's on its second transaxle because with all the tractor pulling they did with it, it got to the point where it jumped out of gear. So I think they put another transaxle in it. That's its second. Trying to remember if we changed this front axle. I don't think we did. I think we just had to change the wheels because one time I was back here mowing and a wheel fell off because we wore out a set of front wheels. That's its second set of front wheels. That's its, I can't remember how many sets of tires Dad said they burned through tractor pulling, but that's not the original set of tires. The fronts, I think, are, nope, the fronts aren't original because we had those on the rims. So, yeah. If this thing could talk, the stories it could probably tell. But anyway. Come on, girl. Runs like a champ. Like I say, I'll have to talk to Grandma and see if I can get more pictures of it, because I'm thinking 50 years on the job, I'm thinking it's time for her to go into retirement, just because it's getting hard to find parts for them, and I want it to be around for another 50 years. So mowing my yard is really gonna start shaving the life off of it with the amount of grass I'm trying to cut, and I think it's time to upgrade to a zero turn, and this thing can just pull a yard trailer around and run the thatcher and do all the light piddly jobs and get a zero turn to take over the mowing. So anyway, I guess that's it for this one. We'll catch you guys on the next one.